Hey there, StarCraft fans! It's Falcon Paladin coming at ya with yet another edition of StarCraft Brood War Remastered! Today it's going to be a match between Fantasy and Pin here on Neo Aztec. Not the first game I've cast between these two players, but there has been some confusion about their names, because I think they've switched races in this replay pack a couple of times. Fantasy is definitely a Terran player who used to play for KT Roaster. So the left side of the map, under his Smurf name alone, it is Fantasy. He's green. And on the top side of the map, it is the yellow Protoss player, Pin, who we've seen go carriers against Fantasy as part of this series on the channel over the last few years. Yeah, I remember one of the first replays I cast in Brood War was between these two players, and I was like, dang, who's this Pin guy? And there have been several theories coming up about who's this dude. There was a player named Pinocchio with a emphasis on capital P, capital I, capital N a few years ago. I want to say he was from like South America somewhere, maybe Brazil, but that never really made sense to me, so I can't figure out who Pin is. He doesn't show up under the Smurf name list at all, so I don't know who he is. Definitely Fantasy here, though. These two players should give each other a wonderful battle. We might see carriers today. We might not, but it should be fantastic. And I hear you, Terran players. I have not been doing you well recently. I've really been focusing on amazing Zerg and Protoss play over the last couple of weeks here. Terran has been a bit neglected. I apologize profusely for that. So we're going to try to get some better Terran players on the channel here for the time being. I do read every comment anybody ever makes on any of my channels. I hear you about this, and we're going to try to make it better for you. So, Probe coming up. He's going to go ahead and harass this barracks wall-off attempt here. Not really a wall necessarily, but just trying to put a barracks on the high ground, because again, this is a weird older map where you're in a sunken area for your main, which is like, what? That doesn't make any sense. Another SCV pulled off the line, and the gas steal. Oh, he tried to block it. He tried to block it with the SCV so that the gas could not be taken, because if you have something inside this little narrow radius, right, of the Vespene Geyser, nothing can be built on top of it, including enemy assimilators. So that was what the attempt was, but the gas steal goes down anyway. We don't see it a lot. It's not a super common thing to do in PvT, is to gas steal the Terran. But either way, the jukes here for Pin are insane. I'm telling you, Pin's a good player. He has won some of these matches versus Fantasy, and Fantasy is definitely an elite, well-known Terran player. You don't get to play for KT Roaster if you're a bad player, okay? It doesn't happen at all. And again, that all collapsed with the Kespa collapse. So Fantasy, again, one of the players who just kind of doesn't have a team anymore, and he'll play in the amateur leagues and stuff, which is not really fair, man. Can you imagine getting matched up against Fantasy in an amateur league and be like, hey, this is Fantasy. This is an insanely good Terran. Why am I playing against him? I'm really an amateur. But then, you know, Kespa collapsed and bad things happen. Anyway, a Zealot comes across the map, and he's going to actually delay construction of this command center depending on the RNG. Oh, he's going after the Marines. He's trying to make the Marines do incredible amounts of micro, and hopefully Fantasy will mess up his build because he's so worried about this Zealot murdering all his dudes. These SCVs are trying to kill the assimilator. SCV's trying to kill the Zealot now. Yo, Probe gets sniped because that's the first thing to kill, but I thought it was two shots. I thought it was two shots from a Zealot. I feel like that Marine took 3 to die. Don't know. Another Zealot coming over here from Pin, though. What a great opening to a match this is. I love aggressive openings. I love it when both players decide, or one of the players decides, I'm not going to sit back and let you macro all day. I'm going to try to kill you fast, or at the very least mess you up to the point that your build is off by 2 or 3 minutes and then I can win. It just takes, it's hard to do this, you know what I mean? It's hard to do this on this side if you're Pin and make stuff back home, which he's doing, mind you. That Zealot goes down after doing, again, delay on the command center, killing a couple SCVs, killing a couple Marines. These Zealots have been mean. I don't think the trades have been great, although another Marine went down. So the trades have not been great, because one Zealot is 100 minerals and Marines are only 50, so the trades, nah. A lot of Zealots went down there. 4 or 5 Zealots went down for 3 Marines, a couple SCVs, and a delay on command center. Meanwhile, Nexus just now coming in for Pin, and the command center is done for Fantasy, so after all that, I would say the Terran player is probably ahead. He was too good to be flustered by the harass attempts, but like I'm not saying he's ahead like he's going to win this game now, because that is not how far ahead he is. There's definitely some chance to make up some time for the Protoss, and I would say he's doing quite nicely at it. He's got 24 probes. He's got his cybernetics core working on that singularity charge upgrade so he can harass with some Dragoons, and we'll see how the Terran deals with that. This is the age-old question. How do you handle Dragoon range harass when it shows up? Because it's annoying to deal with, but you have some options. As that scouting SCV gets hacked to pieces. You make a bunker first, and then you have a command center. So here's the thing. If you want to have tanks out, you can't have tanks out and have a command center out at the same time. You can have tanks out early if you delay your command center. If your opponent also delays their nexus, it's a whole big thing. It's hard to explain, but if it's a one base cybernetics core upgrade Dragoon build, you can't expand and really hope to survive it that well unless you rush to tanks and skip the expansion. So you can make a bunker, or you cannot make a bunker as long as you get a tank out first, etc., etc. I hope this makes sense. I'm usually better at explaining things than this, but yeah, so the options are get a bunker and expand and then get tanks, or get tanks and then expand. Those are your choices. And again, it depends on what the Protoss player does too. Does he get an expansion out before he works on the range upgrade or after he works on the range upgrade? That matters immensely. So the Dragoons show up. Singularity charge is just about done, but siege mode for tanks is just about done here too. So I would say that Fantasy's in a great position. These Dragoons will probably get a couple hits off on this bunker. Might have to pull a couple SCVs off to repair that thing, but then a siege tank's going to show up and he's going to have siege mode. And then the Dragoons have to get on out because they can jump on top of one tank, but if there's a bunker supporting it, the bunker with the Marines are going to do big time damage to those Dragoons. So tank shows up. You might actually just try to push these guys away before they can get anything done at all. And there we go. So there's the attack. SCV comes over to repair it because Dragoons are pretty good against buildings. And the siege mode comes up and fires on the Dragoons, and they have to back out. There you go. Called it. Called it on that one. I like how the barracks is floating here. If it was floated a little bit further back, I feel like that would be so the Dragoons can't focus down the tank directly. Because if they A-move, they're going to try to take down the bunker and leave the tank alone, which is bad for them. But if they focus on the tank directly, they can possibly kill it. Not with this number of Dragoons, but with a couple more Dragoons. Anyway, barracks is here. Maybe the barracks were just there so it wouldn't get killed by the Dragoons. Yeah, it wanted to be out front to see what's going on. Anyway. Doop, 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 doop. Hey, do you guys have any thoughts on that Jaedong game that I cast the other day where I only showed Jaedong's perspective? If you didn't see that, maybe go back and watch. It was a Jaedong versus... Oh, who was this? Or Gujila. And all I showed was Jaedong's perspective. And it was kind of cool. I was a little bit skeptical that it would be fun to cast, but it turns out it was kind of fun. I might do one another in a few weeks here, if you're interested. Maybe go back and watch it if you haven't watched it. Because it was definitely a unique thing I did on my channel. Something I've never done before. I try to keep it interesting around here. But I also understand you're not here for new and interesting necessarily. You're here for Brood War, which has been around for 20 years. So tank dropping on this entirely undefended base. Oh, I don't think he knew this base was here. He was just going to come drop up here and try to cause some... Oh my gosh, that positioning. What is this garbage? How are you supposed to handle that? Well, you got to get a dropship, I guess. A shuttle in particular. Oh, that's... What? How have I not seen this before on this map? I've cast a few games on Neo Aztec. I guess the Dragoons can reach the tank, which is extraordinarily useful, and that tank's going to die. Can it reach? Oh, they can reach this one, kind of. One Dragoon at a time can reach it, which is definitely not worth it. You're not going to kill it fast enough to be problematic. Nice block on those vultures. The slow vultures, because speed's on the way. Look how... They look like they're old people driving when they don't have speed. How crazy is that? We're going 4 miles an hour. The speed upgrade is extreme. Hey, do they get the dropship? No, the dropship escapes with one of the tanks. And there are Dragoons waiting for it down here, though. So I'm not... I mean, it could maybe make a break for it here. Right? Like, this area is fairly open, but he doesn't know that. Anyway, I heard some loading and unloading over here. Was there more? Maybe from the... The vulture pilots are like, please finish the speed upgrade. Our bikes are so stupid slow. Also, like, from a real-world perspective, it makes no sense these bikes can only go faster once an upgrade is done back home. Like, in the real world, yeah, you could research an upgrade to make vulture bikes faster, but you'd have to bring the bikes home, get them retrofitted with the new hardware, right? The new mechanical pieces that make them go faster, and then they can go out and be fast. But no, that's not how it works in RTS. You get the upgrade, and everybody gets the upgrade, even if they're far away from home at the time. Always something that's kind of made me laugh. Arbiter Tribunal on the way from the Protoss player, which again, if you're going past 10 minutes in a PvT, you want it. And as per usual, again, I talked about this a lot in PvT, you want to keep that tank count down. This has not really been the focus of Fantasy today. He doesn't have a billion tanks, but he's starting to double pump them, which will add up over time. And the Dragoons need to jump on top of these tanks and kill them before 30 tanks arrive, and then everybody dies. That is the goal. Is he making additional gateways? I don't see a carrier switch here for the Protoss. I really don't see him attempting it. He would be starting Stargates sooner than this, I believe, as EMP gets started for Fantasy on his science vessels. But again, it really seems like there's no required time for Protoss to go for carriers. I've seen them go for it immediately against Terran. I've seen them go for it at the 25-30 minute mark against Terran. It's just whatever they feel like. And some of it is gamesmanship, right? Some of it is the Terran thinks it's past the time carriers would show up, and so he stops worrying about it, and then suddenly 8 carriers show up and he dies. Like, that's pretty fun stuff. Hard to do, again, against an elite Terran player because they have ComSat for one. They're going to see what's going on. I mean, yes, there's a Stargate, but there's no sign of a fleet beacon. More gateways are coming in. It looks like Pin is going to try to win this thing with ground, which is hard to do. And I just don't think he's done the work early enough to make this happen. Look at this contained by Fantasy. This is mean. He's got a bunker up here. He's got spider mines all over the place. He has a billion tanks back here. Okay, there's 8. There's 8 tanks back here, but again, he's double pumping them. And they're spread out, so you can't stasis all of them at once. This might be a decent stasis target, but that's really the only one. Man, +1 attack is done for this mech. +1 attack is done for the Dragoons as well. And a Zealot attack in the natural base would actually be pretty good. A Zealot attack in the main base would be sick if you can pull that off. You would have to send the shuttle around. Again, shuttle speed's not done, so this thing is garbage slow. But around this way, right, and then to the left, and then up. It would take some time, but I think it'd be worth it. 10 Zealots at a time in production. All right, man. You're going to try to break this thing with the Zealot Dragoon play with some stasis, because stasis is almost done, and I don't know if it's going to work, is the problem here. He did manage to take a 4th base, so he's economically ahead of the Terran player, who just now has his 3rd, which is fine. It is. You want to be ahead of the Terran. If you're going to win this thing, I would really like Pin to take another base, but that, at this point of the game, would be hard to do. He doesn't want to take this low ground one because the tanks would be in range of it pretty easily. Can't really expand here for the same reason. There are tanks in the neighborhood. I guess he could sneak one down here because there are bases down here too, but it just gets hard is the thing. And this is where Terran looks overpowered, is when they're entrenched like this. But guess what? Here comes Pin marching in, getting Zealots, absorbing spider mine shots with their bodies. Goliath's trying to take down the Arbiter, but they're really focused on the Zealots more than anything else right now. Is there enough Protoss here to get this win? And the answer is no. He is forced to retreat from the position. It's 143 to 137 total supply, but the tanks are great force multipliers for the Terran army right now. Ooh, science vessel sniped down by these Dragoons, but look at the tank fire. Just raw shelling them from forever away. Tank 3 kills, tank 3 kills, tank 5 kills. This is what I'm talking about. Maybe they can deny attempted expansion and do a 4th base up here or down here, but that is not much of an army, and there's really nowhere for them to go unless they recall home or a shuttle shows up to shuttle them home. Terran, meanwhile, doing pretty much what he wants to do, right? He's got the contain. It wasn't broken. Is he building? He's building a barracks at the front lines just to mess with the pathing of the Zealots and the Dragoons. Yeah, this small army, like I said, they're not doing anything, and they're not getting home unless they get recalled, and recall is not done being researched yet. Taking shots from Goliaths, never good for anything from the ground to the air. That reminds me, on Sundays, I do Brood War streams where people send me their replays, which if you want me to cast a replay, you can send it to falconpaladin@gmail.com with the subject of Brood War, and there's a good chance I'll cast it on one of those Sunday YouTube streams. But I do like to play Helm's Deep with my subscribers out there, which is a user map settings version of the Lord of the Rings Helm's Deep Siege by like the orcs and stuff. It's a lot of fun, and like all the heroes are different units, and like the orc commander is an ultralisk, and the spellcaster is a defiler, and On the good guys' side, there's a Goliath hero, and I've gotten the Goliath hero a couple times, and it's awesome. It does great damage, and I looked at the tooltip, and the anti-air damage is like 500 damage a shot, but there's no air units to attack in the Helm's Deep scenario. So it always makes me sad to be like, the anti-air would be sick on this hero, but there's nothing to kill. There's literally nothing that flies for either army. Anyway, yeah, Fantasy is entrenched. Remember when I said having a lot of tanks? Like, he's got 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18... He's got 19 tanks here. This is a stranglehold. Oh, you going for it, boys? You're going for it, boys. Here goes nothing. Trying to tack on in. Zealots getting on top. There are enough vultures to hold. We got a defensive matrix up on this tank. The stasis catches, well, one of the tanks and a science vessel for some reason, but there's just not enough. There's not enough here for Pin. I feel like he's got an army advantage right now, but he can't kill this tank count nearly enough to make it worth it. He just didn't do the work early, and this is how it works if you are Fantasy. If you're an elite Terran player and a Protoss does not slow down your tank count enough over time, then suddenly there are a bajillion +2 tanks. Your ground army can't be big enough to take it on straight ahead. Can't do it. This is why we see the carrier transition from Protoss, is because dealing with tanks is hard for them. But if they can do it right, it looks overpowered, right? It looks like Protoss is OP if they can do it right. But if you can't do it right against a good player like Fantasy, you're going to have a bad time. Observer does get sniped off by ye old Goliath. 4th base taken here down to the south by Fantasy. And you're still on 4 bases for Pin. This is not a winning recipe right now for the Protoss. It's not. He did what he could. He went for 2 major attacks from 2 different directions. Too many vultures, too many spider mines, too many tanks. And yes, it's a 200 to 160 supply advantage for the Protoss right now, which means he has more stuff army-wise. But I guess, 20 of that, I guess, is probes, which is fair. So maybe he's more even on worker count, but tanks are not meant to be easily engaged on the ground by an evenly numbered army. There needs to be an advantage in army supply, and if you can do that, you can get some tanks. But if you're even, you're gonna have a bad time, whether you're a Zerg or whether you are Protoss. You really got to keep that tank count down. That's all there is to it. All right, he's got to go for it again. You can't let this contain continue because he's out expanding you. And if you try to make it happen, no storm either, which I find a little bit odd. Usually there's storm or something, but grounding it in right now. Zealots on top of everything. Tanks exploding, science vessels taking hits, and maybe Pin can break through this, but the reinforcing vultures coming from the south, lending their DPS against the Zealots especially, making the Dragoons less good because there's nothing buffering for them. The tanks are just getting direct shots on the Dragoon bodies. They have to flee. These guys took a roundabout wrong direction and going to take some tank fire for it. And it's 149 to 136 supply. Again, there is an advantage for the Protoss overall, but 20 of that is in probe count, which idle probes, man. He's oversaturated. He is expiring minerals like there's no tomorrow. He's trying to expand down this way, would be my guess, but the engineering bay is going to scout that, and then you're going to have, and then you're going to have vultures on your face sooner rather than later. Is he trying? He's going to try to recall some probes down here, I feel like. Or maybe get a recall inside the Terran base. That'd be a good thing, too. We haven't seen any of those today. Because he's like, I can't break this. This contain has been here for 10 minutes, it feels like. And I've done some damage to it, but there's always more tanks behind the tanks that I kill. It's so demoralizing. And it can be. It can be ridiculously, stupidly demoralizing. SCV coming around. I'm not sure to expand as much as he is to scout out what's happening. He's like, did I actually take a base down here? So the Arbiters are going to try to go. Did she just try to send some probes through the... Is that just freeing up? Maybe just freeing up available supply for other stuff. This looks like a recall group to me. But 2 Arbiters. A double Arbiter recall attempt. Kind of good, actually. I see you down here on the mini-map. You're hiding. Oh, my gosh. The EMPs, though. The potential EMPs, though. Is it too late? Is it too late for the EMPs? Look at the spider mines getting laid. He's so stupidly prepared for this. He's insanely prepared for this. The spider mines get massive hits on the Dragoons. The Zealot count is still a bit of a problem down here, but the Vultures are fighting, the tanks are fighting, Goliaths are coming down too with a good amount of DPS versus ground as well. EMPs on the Arbiter, so no stasises are available at all. Not enough energy messages coming in for the Protoss player. He is going to get this main command center, which is a minor victory, not exactly game-winning by any stretch. Going after the Academy, going after some of these supply depots. But, yeah, there's just enough here to handle it. Fantasies knew it was coming. He sent Army home to deal with it. He prepared for it as well as he could. He lost a bunch of stuff because you're going to lose stuff if you get recalled inside your base by 2 Arbiters, or, 3 Arbiters, however many there were. Yeah, Arbiters taking shots to the face is never a good thing. Might as well get the heck on out of there. And take an SCV with you before you have to go home. 151 to 131 supply. Fantasy still has his stranglehold everywhere in the middle of the map here. No expansion attempted at all by Pin. That's the thing about recalls, man. You recall in a Terran base, you're not going to win with it. I've never seen that win at the pro level. You can slow down the Terran player. You can supply block him. You can kill SCVs and production facilities, but you're not going to win. You still have to deal with the majority of their army out here, which there's just not enough. I like the Archon play, although Vultures are pretty good against Archons. Spider-Mine's pretty good against Archons, too. They can close into tank range a little bit better than Dragoons can, for sure. So again, coming on in. Gonna do some splash damage here. Taking that tank fire, taking the Spider-Mine shots, though. Arbiters involved in the play, but just too many tanks returning home from defending the homeland. Returning to the front after defending the homeland. And that's your good game. Pin taps out, and Fantasy is your winner in 21 minutes and 38 seconds. Ridiculous. A ridiculously impressive display from Fantasy, showing why Terran sometimes appears completely overpowered. Oh, amazing. Amazing stuff there between both of these players. I mean, mostly by Fantasy. I liked the early aggression from Pin. It did some work. It slowed down Fantasy somewhat, but the tank count just started increasing, and by the time there were any serious attempts to whittle it down, it was too late. There were just always too many. He never won an engagement at all in this game, and you just can't win StarCraft if you never win an engagement. It was a nice recall, right? It was a good recall. Look at just the wide swath of destruction that he dropped on everybody's heads there. Well, Fantasy's heads in particular. Killed some supply depots, got a command center, which wasn't super important. There wasn't much gas left. Not many minerals left here either. Getting factories might have been better. And then maybe staging some kind of an assault on the other side, but he just didn't have the army supply to do both. Yeah, these spider minefields are sick too. That is really, really hard to break with your zealots if you send them in first. And if you send in the Dragoons, they're in range of the tanks while they're trying to pick off the spider mines. It's a beautiful, beautiful composition here. I hope you Terran fans enjoyed it, because that was great. I didn't know that Fantasy would win that because I don't watch these in advance, but it was still pretty good. All right, end of the day, 159,000 points for Fantasy, 143,000 for Pin. Producing a lot of Terran units, killing a lot of units, and losing fewer units than your Protoss opponent is good. It's a good advantage for sure. Units, what is this? Structures constructed and raised. Great job. Mostly on that recall, raising Terran structures, but not up in the end. And then resources here, I mean, more Protoss, right? More Protoss mineral, more spent and more mined, and about the same number of gas. And if you watch this, you'd be like, the Protoss won, but no, he needs to mine more than this. He needs to get 4 or 5 bases out as the Terran player is on 2. That's how I've seen it work, man. You expand a bunch of times. Terran can't do a lot about it if you prepare your bases adequately, as you can. And then suddenly you're on a multiple base economy. You're pumping 10, 15 Dragoons at once. And you can do something, but didn't quite do it. This is a harder map to do that on. It is harder to take those bases. They're further away. They're harder to defend. I get that. But, yeah, Pin did what he could. Fantasy was a beast. And that's going to be it from me. So this has been Falcon Paladin coming at ya with yet another edition of StarCraft Brood War Remastered. Go ahead, hit that like button. Hit that subscribe if you like what you saw and what you heard today. You can also catch me on Twitter, Facebook, Patreon, and Twitch, all at /Falcon Paladin. And until next time, as always, thank you so much for watching, and you take care of yourself.